live with Polaris Dawn Mission Commander Jared Isaacman. This is going to be a real treat. If you have any questions, type them in chat. Now's your chance, but this should be good. Let's roll the intro.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Covering up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Look at this!
Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed. We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? We don't need any more of these.
Hello and welcome to another NSF Live. We have a very special guest on today's show, so I will not belabor the intro. I'm Jack Beyer, content manager for NSF. Luckily, you will not only be hearing me talk on today's stream because we once again have the one, the only, the incredibly amazing. I don't even know how to introduce you. We have Jared Isaacman. Jared, the man who is single-handedly furthering our knowledge of human spaceflight. Jared, how are you doing today, buddy? Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
I'm doing great. That was a way too generous of an intro, but love the opening reel, man. It's hard not to get fired up seeing that footage. How often do you guys update that thing?
Oh my God. I can't believe you just did this. So it's my job. It's my baby. I'm the one that made that with the help of Ryan Caton. And I'm woefully behind. It needs so much updating because we've had so many amazing Starship visuals. Like the catch isn't in it yet. Perfect example. But yeah, I need to get on that. But thank you. You said the same exact thing last time
I was thinking I think I did because it was like it's very cool. But yeah, the last month or so of spaceflight, there's probably a lot more footage you could drop in that thing.
Yeah, we've got Europa Clipper, we've got so many things, and pretty soon here we'll have New Glenn, which is going to be amazing. But I appreciate your kind words about the intro. It's kind of my baby, and it's probably my favorite thing I've ever made because the number one thing I think I can usefully do with my life is get people excited about spaceflight. Oh God, I'm sorry for the on-screen reactions, but that's like the noblest thing I could think to do is serve as part of this hype train. And honestly, you've been doing the same thing plus science. So that's why you got such a gracious intro. You're putting your skin in the game, and you're saying, "Hey, I want to further what we can do and what we know in terms of human spaceflight." So, on behalf of all humanity, as if I've been designated this role, thank you for what you've done. I mean that with no hyperbole.
Very, very generous of you. I was lucky to be here. So all good.
Good deal.
Thanks.
Also, say what? Sorry.
Thanks for having me today. This is cool.
Heck yeah. Also joining us is going to be Sawyer. Sawyer, how you doing, buddy?
I am fantastic. I am so glad to be on this conversation with you, Jared. Thank you again for all of your time and what you're doing for spaceflight. This is going to be fun.
All right. I have done my homework in advance of this interview. I've listened to a bunch of your other post-landing interviews, and I figured I would start off with a sort of a less serious question, and then we can get into the more serious questions. But you said in one of your interviews that the first thing that you ate once you landed back was a cheeseburger. So I have to know, was that the best cheeseburger you've ever eaten?
It was. It was unbelievable. It was literally right there when we got off the helicopter. I mean, we didn't eat much in space. We didn't really have much time for it. And all of like the fresh food that we had, you couldn't use after the EVA. So we had like basically the MREs for the last 3 days. So anyway, we just didn't eat much. And I actually think SpaceX got the idea for it from, we spoke to Tim Dodd in space.
Yeah.
And I think he asked us whether it was during the recording or just casual, like, what are you guys most looking forward to eating when you get back? And SpaceX was obviously listening into the comms. So better, we had 50% of us that said, a double cheeseburger, and then another crew member said steak, so we're still in the beef family. So I think majority rules. And when we got off the helicopter, it was an unbelievable double cheeseburger waiting for us. SpaceX made. It was pretty cool.
Nice. So there's a book series that I'm super obsessed with. It's called Expeditionary Force, and the spaceship captain that is the hero of the whole series, frequently on long space flights laments that he doesn't have a cheeseburger. So I just thought that was particularly excellent. If you're looking for a good audiobook or series of audiobooks, check that out at some point. But yeah. Chat, if you have any questions, please at NASASpaceflight, and we, specifically Sawyer, will see your question pop up and we'll go through them. But yeah, I'm just going to start running down our list here, Jared, and if there's anything that strikes your interest, we can spend a little bit more time on it. But first off, how are you feeling? It's been a few weeks after Polaris Dawn. I know you guys are still in the middle of all of the debrief and still doing work with the various science components in terms of, submitting to MRIs or giving blood or things like that. So how are you feeling? Are you finally beginning to feel rested?
Well, just like general health wise, we feel great. Kid ran his 16th Ironman 2 weeks after coming back from space and placed like 5th in his age group and got invited to world championships. So
wow,
he's obviously on another level of like, human fitness, but we all feel good. I say that because you're like, is everybody rested? I don't know if we're rested. We haven't been home much. So this could be maybe my 4th night at home since I've come back. And I think that I really kind of speak for the whole crew on that. We've just been on the road a lot. And so just for, about, I'd say almost 2.5 weeks of it, there was a bunch of science and research plus just debriefs and data review. And then we're actually not even done yet. I think Monday or Tuesday next week we'll be done. We've been visiting every one of the SpaceX sites and just, getting a chance to meet all the people that contributed to the effort and thank them and, just kind of share in the accomplishment together, I guess. And then also obviously celebrate all the other, historic missions they've done in the last month or so, which is pretty awesome. So anyway, like we've just been on the road a bunch, but it's been really fun. It's we're still kind of on mission. Haven't really gotten to that time to catch up on rest or really reflect yet,
Got it. Yeah, and like so many things that you guys do, that the visiting the various facilities and all of the people that helped enable this amazing mission is reminiscent of what astronauts from NASA would do. They would go and visit the various centers, visit the various contractors. I think they even had like a slang term for it. Sawyer, you might know what it is off the top of your head since you are a resident astronaut expert. But yeah, basically putting a face to the person who they're enabling to go to orbit is important, and not only beforehand but afterwards as a thanks. That's really cool.
And they still do. I mean, a lot of the places we went to, the NASA crews have gone to as well, and it is awesome. It's really, we all know it's really hard to do missions like this or really any human spaceflight mission, and it takes the contributions of thousands of people, and you owe it to them to express their appreciation and share in the experience together. So yeah, I think all the crews do it, which is great.
Absolutely. So we're looking at footage here of launch. And now you've been to space twice, first on Inspiration4, now on Polaris Dawn. Obviously, the mission profile for Polaris Dawn, wildly different than for Inspiration4, much higher orbit. Was there any, how did launch feel to you the second time around? Was there any differences, maybe due to your experience or the mission profile?
Launch is just awesome, man. And it's, now, with 2 different crews going up, I can tell you it's always the same. Everybody's got huge smiles, lots of exhilaration. I don't know. I think Kid was giving the thumbs up on the way uphill. There's not a lot of fear going into it or whatnot, which, it's kind of crazy because you got a controlled explosion, zorching you to orbital velocities, but it's just a lot of confidence that the vehicle is going to do its thing. And if it doesn't like something, it knows how to get away from Falcon very, very quickly. So it's just a lot of trust. And I think everyone goes into it with this, this is going to be, the day has arrived and, this is going to be a hell of a ride and just enjoy it. So everybody's just really charged up. That no change at all on this, with this crew. Everybody felt exactly the same way. And, I think the cool part, I was able to, maybe share a little bit of some of the, some of the either sensations, the changes that are going to happen, whether it's like throttle up or down, or what they're going to feel at stage separation, to kind of help the crew stay ahead of, what the rocket's doing. But other than that, like, I mean, I think everybody was just really excited going uphill, like the day arrived.
I mean, speaking of the day arriving, there was several sort of delays related to the hurricane season weather in Florida, which for a capsule that's going to be splashing down in the waters around Florida is a little bit tricky. Were those sort of repeated delays challenging to you guys as a crew? Having to go through the motions multiple times, having to stay in quarantine, for example. Like, how long did you guys even stay in quarantine?
The stop and go is something we got pretty used to over the last, 2.5 years. It's kind of the nature of the beast with the development program. So there were a lot of periods where we thought we were 6 months away from going to space, and then you learn something, or there's a setback, and then you got to push it out another 6 months. So I don't know. I think we were pretty well adjusted. It was kind of on theme to go into quarantine and wind up, launching 2 weeks later than we thought. We were in quarantine about 3 weeks. Now the good news is that the crew 8 guys actually surpassed us in terms of weather delays on their return. So and I say, I mean, it's good news because now Polaris Dawn is no longer the problem child that is tied up 39A for as long as it did, and the crew 8 guys with some pretty impressive photography skills got a couple more weeks in space. So it all worked out. But yeah, I mean, Dragon is very sensitive to wind limitations. It's predominantly like the horizontal velocity that can hit the vehicle on splashdown that has a pretty firm limitation. So it's hard when you get multiple days out in the future to say, like, can I be better than 99.5% not to violate that wind speed? And like, that's really the degree of, of certainty you need in order to fly Dragon. So again, whether you're coming back from the space station or not. So when we were fine. Like, we were running every day, grilling, flying jets. Like, we were having a great time in quarantine. We just felt bad for everybody else. A lot of, hundreds of people flew out to see the launch and then had to get sent home. They did get somewhat of a consolation prize. They got to see my first booster launch and then, have a fiery end, to its career. But yeah, a lot of people were there and there was good momentum. And then for it to, for people to be sidelined for a couple of weeks, I know that was hard on, it was hard on everybody but the crew, hard on families, but like we had a great time. We were fine.
Good deal. Yeah, we have some photography questions. Speaking of the fantastic photography from Matt Dominic on Crew 8, so we're gonna hit that here in a little bit because I know you guys were taking the role and the mission of sharing what was going on seriously, which I, as a photographer, very much appreciate. But really quickly, the last question I want to hit rapid fire before we take a question from Sawyer here. You said in our interview about a year ago that one of the things you were looking forward to for Polaris Dawn, perhaps most, was the reaction of your crewmates. Which, side note, when we talked a year ago, Starship Flight 2 hadn't happened, and now Flight 5, and they've caught a booster. Like, what is going on? But how was that, seeing the reaction of your crewmates on this flight?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really great moment when we got to orbit. Just again, so much time had gone into the mission. I was eager to see them finally arrive. And they did great. Like, they loved it there, and everybody kind of fought for every second to get stuff done and take advantage of the opportunity. So it was very special.
Awesome. Sawyer, we have a viewer question, perhaps?
Sure. While we're talking about the quarantine portion, Zapfam was wondering, what do you do in quarantine when it extends to 3 weeks? How many card games did you end up playing?
You're really just trying not to get sick. That's the whole thing. We ran, we barbecued, we spent time with family, we watched movies. It was fine. It was really fun. I would say like the hardest part was we had to do a pretty serious sleep shift. So, when we got there on like, call it the media day, a week out, we stayed up for like 36 hours and did a slam shift. So basically, our day began at 8 p.m. Eastern and ended at like 11 a.m. And that really beat us up for a bit. And then when the mission started slipping, we were like, well, we can probably back off this a little bit. So then we I wouldn't say we got totally back to normal, but we did. And then, 2 days before we went to space, it was like, we think we're going to have a window. Everybody slammed back. So that was probably the hardest part of quarantine, was how it was kind of playing with our sleep schedule a little bit, but it all was good. We kept busy. So
Speaking of your sleep schedule, again, I did a little bit of homework before this one, and in multiple interviews, you have referred to the fact that you guys didn't get a lot of sleep on orbit, not because necessarily it was uncomfortable or what have you, just because you had a lot to do. You had 40-some science experiments to do. This wasn't just a joyride, and you wanted to make sure that you got all that stuff done, because if you didn't, you feel like you're letting people on the ground down. So I just have to ask, how long did you stay up for?
it was a pretty long time. I mean, you've heard us all mention this a couple times, because like, it was pretty serious, like the lack of sleep. And, I think in a lot of ways, you learn from every human spaceflight mission. There just aren't that many of them, not to come away with some takeaways. And I think there was maybe an impression at one point, even inside of SpaceX, like, the free flyer world is easier for us because it's entirely within our control. We're not going to the space station. We don't have to work with other entities on it. And there's some truth that there's a lot of challenges that come with it. You right from the get-go you have to work within this, defined time period, which has to fit within weather, because you have only so much consumable. So you're on the clock right away. And there's just no time, for, acclimating to the spaceflight environment. Like as soon as you get there, you got to go. And I just think, with this crew, with what we had set out that we wanted to do, there was no way we were going to not try and get through all of it. And then there were some, milestones that, you couldn't move. Like when we would go for the EVA was like a very specific window. Like we had, call it like within 12 hours to maybe play with, but it had to be done by kind of a certain time period. When we would do the Starlink test was going to be a certain time period, when we were going to do a mobility demo. So like there were things that you couldn't move if people weren't feeling well or whatnot. And then you had all that other science and research. So I don't know, it creates this race that's on, and the easiest thing to give up is sleep. And we gave up a lot of it.
Yeah, speaking on behalf of the entire team at NSF, which at varying times has varying amounts of sleep, shall we say, based on whatever's happening in spaceflight, that hit home to me a little bit extra, shall we say. So thank you for putting in the hours to get that science done. So Sawyer, we have another.
I think we ended up sleep shifting with you here at NSF too.
Yep.
Like we know it too. Like we know it, like there were a lot of people on that mission with us. Like, we know mission control was completely beat. Like they didn't sleep for like 5 days. It felt like, even though they had a couple shifts, like our families were up, and anyone who was following the mission, it seemed like everything that was kind of, cool that was going on was like 3 a.m. So we know a lot of people kind of endured that sleep deprivation event with us, and we appreciate it.
Good deal. Sawyer, you have another viewer question for us?
I sure do. Here's an interesting one from Orbital Launch Mount. I know you didn't have much free time in space, but while you were up there, did you have any kind of special playlist on the mission?
Yeah, I'd give us like an F, maybe a D on this. So we had an awesome playlist. Like all of our, friends and family contributed to it. And it was very cool, because like each major event that was going to happen by that day, was a theme, for what songs went into it. Some of it was some dark humor in there, but in any case, like we had a great plan for it, and then we were awful about it in space. Like it was like I don't know, just somebody would realize like, did we forget to hit play? And you were like, the whole day went by. So I don't know. We probably listened to like 4% of the playlist. It was pretty bad.
I mean, it happens. I find myself falling into musical ruts at times, and music is really important to me. And yet I somehow still forget it periodically, and then I'll rediscover, a favorite band or a favorite song, and I'll be like, man, what is wrong with me? Like, how have I not been listening? It happens.
Any insight onto some of what those songs might have been
I suspect there was some
that you
Linkin
can
Park in
share?
there.
We tried to, in each kind of phase of flight or major event, we tried to, think of like, there were at least a fair number of songs of like what the worst case would be in this particular situation and play. And that was like the theme of the song. We use a lot of humor to like disarm some of the realities that are in human spaceflight. So I don't know, probably none of them that are too good to share, but.
Fair enough. So let's talk a little bit about the EVA. That is sort of the headline of this entire mission, right? A lot of the time you hear about being in an EVA suit being like inside of a sort of a rigid balloon. I mean, you're in a self-contained spacecraft, and that the astronauts have to sort of fight against the rigidity of the suit that you get with that pressurization. And we can sort of see when you were out on the Skywalker platform, you kind of had like a stiff elbow looking sort of situation. Is that what was going on? Were you like having to fight against the suit?
I mean, what you're describing is true. Like when you're, what is like a very comfortable piece of clothing when it's pressurized up, you have to work against it and your met rates go up doing so. But that's not why my arm was that way. Like the suit is designed in such a way that literally wherever you stop moving is where the arm stays. So that was just my arm resting. Everything I was doing was with the other arm. And then I switched arms when I went from the right hand of the mobility test to the left hand. So people have asked that. It's like one of the more common questions was like, it looks like your arm was stuck like that. I was like, I wasn't using it. And that's a lot of what you learn also in training is if you don't have to be working against the suit, don't. Like these are all lessons learned, 60 years ago, from early EVAs when people were blinded by their sweat,
Right.
So we did so much testing of like how to minimize our met rates when we're out there. And so anyway, and subsequently, by the way, it was like almost freezing. Like there was so much fear of overheating. Actually, the suit did such a good job with cooling. But in any case, that was just where my arm was. I would say like the suit's mobility was very good. I mean, it was equal to or better than we expected in a lot of ways. And it doesn't blow up into that huge balloon. The first day of Polaris Dawn training, essentially, I wore my Inspiration4 suit and we ran it up to 5 PSI. That was a Marshmallow Man moment. I mean, that is big. There's nothing streamlined about the IVA suit when it's fully pressed up, and mobility was not good. And it doesn't need to do anything other than get you home alive if you ever have to use it.
Right.
Versus the Polaris Dawn, like the EVA suits we flew, very streamlined, and actually the mobility was pretty awesome. But they'll keep improving on it. That's the whole idea. So.
Right. This is just one iteration along the line of many that it will take to get to a suit that is capable of operating on Mars or the moon. So it makes sense. Just one more step.
Yeah, 100%. It was, you see some of the, people's thoughts of like how far that suit is from, what its intended purpose is. Like this is what SpaceX does, like it's like a couple of years ago they were trying to perfect catching suborbital landings of just Starship, right? Now they caught the whole damn super heavy on on the chopsticks. Like this things happen very quickly. When we were just out in Hawthorne, we've already seen the new wrist rotators that they're building into the suit. We knew probably 9 months before we flew the changes that were going to go in from like a thermal regulation perspective. So, and obviously like the backpack is is not lost on anyone. You're probably not going to dangle off a Starship with a 500-foot long umbilical when you're on the moon or Mars. So SpaceX has got a great roadmap. They learn from this, they make it better. This is what they do really well.
Really, just looking at the visual of you on the Skywalker platform, man, what an experience. Like, what I can't even begin to fathom, like, versus looking through a window, sitting there and just staring out at this perfect gem of a planet that we have. Have you felt that experience carry with you over time? Do you feel like the glow is fading over time, like with any major event, or is it something that you think will sort of stick with you forever?
I mean, my first mission in space, like where the impact I saw from, the impact on me, how I was changed from seeing our planet and seeing the moon. I went into the second mission feeling very similarly, and I took different things away from the EVA that I wouldn't have just looking out the window. Like for example, looking out the window is a pure visual stimulus, and it is very incredible. And there is more, I feel like energy, like, the brightness of the Earth is something that isn't captured, I think, in a lot of video. So, and seeing the moon, like that was what was the motivation for me of wanting to continue to go out and explore and make progress, because we are a speck of dust, a microscopic speck of dust in the grand scheme of the universe. Like that was everything I took away from the first mission. The EVA's perspective was different. Looking at Earth was relatively the same, but looking into the darkness of space was with just the visor separating you, from, the vacuum of space. It was a very unwelcoming feeling. It was it was like almost like a warning sign that everything that you are looking at is going to kill you. Like this is very hard. And if you want to try and come out and really conquer this last frontier, like it's going to be difficult, very difficult. And that was kind of what I felt looking into the darkness of space. Like it was not a hospitable environment.
I mean, it's not. It truly isn't, and which just makes doing something like an EVA that much more remarkable. I do have a question that I've been wanting to ask you for quite some time. When you were doing those mobility tests with the suit, it seemed like you were performing an action and then giving a numerical rating to the ease of doing that action. Is that a fair assessment of what was going on there?
Yeah.
The numbering scale that you were using, is that just like a 1 to 5, good to bad, or was it the Cooper-Harper rating scale? Because I know you're a flight test guy.
Yeah, I think that it was somewhat specific to, I mean, it was like I think custom design scale by SpaceX, where each number kind of corresponded to a degree of difficulty, from something that is completely unusable to in line with expectations to exceeding expectations. So, yeah, I think that I mean, I know who gets credit for it at SpaceX, and kind of created the entire test matrix that we were adhering to, but it was somewhat specific to our operation.
Got it. Just for our viewers, the Cooper-Harper rating scale is a flight test rating scale for how controllable an airplane is, and it's in classic flight test fashion, very delightful. Like that you don't want to be a 10. The vehicle is out of control. It's at all times or something like that. It's pretty wild. But I've always wanted to ask that, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, in our world, the smaller the number, the worse would have been. So fives would have been unthinkable, actually.
Got it. And then to accomplish the EVA, this is something I don't think a lot of people realize. You had to go through a pre-breathe process, which is something they also do on the ISS. Although the pre-breathe on Polaris Dawn was quite unique. In science fiction, the astronauts are just going to the airlock and then getting in their suit and going out. But that's not how real life works, unfortunately. You have to acclimatize your body and rid your blood of nitrogen so you don't get nitrogen narcosis. The the pre-breathe on Polaris Dawn was sort of different to what they do on the ISS and than anybody else has done, in that it was a long, extended process over many hours. How did the crew find the pre-breathe process? Because it's basically like you're being shuttled to the top of a mountain, right? Like you're going to a very low altitude state.
Yeah, it's a great way to describe it. We describe it very similarly. I mean, look, the first couple days on orbit, your odds are at least 50% of the crew members are going to feel really unwell with space adaptation syndrome. And for those not as familiar, there is no kind of correlation to seasickness or motion sickness on Earth. You could be somebody who gets really car sick and you're amazing in space. And you're somebody who never gets sick on Earth. You know, you could be out in the water, you know, in high sea states, and you're going to be a wreck in space. Like, so that is the reality. My first mission, it was 50%. My second mission, it was 50%. And to have to go through that while also getting dragged up the hill was very hard. So meaning, and when I'm, you know, to why dragging up the hill is we were continuously lowering the pressure in the vehicle. The idea, you want to go from Dragon's nominal 1 atmosphere, 14.7 psi, to when you're in the suit and you're at 5.2 psi, there's a big pressure change difference. And generally high to low is where you're going to have your risk of DCS, and low to high is generally the cure. You know, that's where we're crushing those bubbles again. So the idea is if you can acclimate your body gradually to a lower and lower pressure, when you open the soda can, if you will, no bubbles. That's what we want. So throughout, you know, basically the first 48 hours, we gradually lowered pressure from 1 atmosphere to call it like 8.6. So you're getting pulled more and more up the mountain. And at various points, we gradually tweaked up the oxygen concentration in the vehicle, you know, so that you weren't kind of hypoxic at that lower pressure, but still stayed underneath flammability limits. It was a balancing game. But I would say that I feel very comfortable saying that for the crew members that were trying to acclimate to space, that did not help. But we did not have there was no choice, right? The ISS, they can do a 100% O2 pre-breathe. We cannot do that without increasing the flammability limits, surpassing, you know, or eclipsing the flammability limits in the vehicle. So, you know, it was a good balance. And I think in the end, like it became a novel 5-step pre-breathe protocol that I think worked out really well. I think what SpaceX came up with there was a pretty good winner. And this is the direction generally that, you know, HLS and others are going to with what's being called an exploration atmosphere, because you probably don't want to do the Apollo Gemini 100% oxygen the entire time.
Right.
This is a nice balance that gets you there, so that when you actually get to the surface of the moon, for example, you can literally just throw your helmet on and go.
So again, as part of this pre-breathe process, like the analogy of it being like you're at the top of a mountain, that's something you guys actually did as part of your training, right? You climbed, I'm sorry, I forget what mountain, but that was also part of your training. Who sort of designs the training that you guys go through for something like this? Is that sort of the Polaris crew and the SpaceX crew, both adding different objectives? Like how does the training program for something like this shake out?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a collaborative process, and even more so on Polaris because it's a joint program. So, you know, I would say like SpaceX weighed in way more in Polaris Dawn they did in Inspiration4, where you know, the mountain climbing, the flying were all you know, basically Inspiration4 initiated forms of training. And I think now SpaceX for sure is like 100% bought in, like the importance of, you know, the outdoor wilderness training, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, again, 50% of people are going to, 100% of people are going to feel very different in space. 50% are going to feel really bad for about 2 days. And you still got to somehow put a smile on your face. You know, even if you had just thrown up, you got to get a smile on your face and kind of press through and get stuff done because you're on the clock. Right. And there's no, like, you definitely never want to take the early come home option. So all that supplemental stuff is very important. On Polaris Dawn, we went to Cotopaxi, so that got you really high, which was good. And it was challenging. But we did a lot of things that were kind of outside the simulator, outside the classroom, and SpaceX did a bunch that were also outside of it that were important too. So.
Super cool. I mean, you guys, such an ambitious and demanding mission. The training for that obviously has to be equally as rigorous. So another sort of highlight to this flight was the Placer and the use of Starlink to be able to communicate with folks back on Earth, communicate with your families. I think it was Anna who was talking about being like all four of you being able to FaceTime all at once. That must have been amazing. But like, how much insight did you guys have into the Starlink connection? Like, are you guys up there running speed tests? Could you see any kind of telemetry, or like, there's anything you had to do to point the dish, or was that sort of all handled on the ground side?
So expectations were very minimal going into the mission. So it was we were expecting we would have, you know, one opportunity to test the Placer and then maybe 20 minutes to transmit the violin footage. And just a lot of problems. Like, I mean, communicating over a beam of light, you know, while you have Draco firings and Starlinks deconflicting, you know, just two objects going 17,500 miles an hour, no easy task. And it hadn't been done before. So you know, even like the awesome Starship footage we see, like they're running off their traditional band, you know, frequency band versus the laser link. So there was a lot that we were told, like, you know, let's not overcommit on what we'll be able to do. And then what happened is, like, our on orbit, even while we were on the pad for a while, like our comm availability was worse than Inspiration4. Like, it was probably somewhere in the 70 percentile. So what happened is basically SpaceX started to fall back on Starlink as literally an alternative means to communicate with mission control. Like, what we thought we would use versus what actually happened was like almost night and day. It was awesome. You know, so yeah, you definitely are changing the attitude of the vehicle a lot, you know, to maintain the, you know, optimal positioning for the link. But they were able to hold coverage incredibly well through almost the entire mission. And like really interesting data they got out of it. Like, we had one, you know, sim case we were doing up there where we were doing CPR, and they could see on the laser, like the actual movement from the chest compressions, which was wild. Anyway,
That's
it was
insane.
yeah. It was pretty awesome. But I will say, like, they had the opportunity to like test in full mission control capability really through Starlink. So it far exceeded expectations. And yeah, I mean, just on the family point alone, normally that's such a nightmare to go through. Like, it's, you know, it's like a cell phone to a radio connection with core in between, and you're passing a microphone around everybody. It's very old school. We were, I think, by like we had 3 family check-ins over 5 days, and by the second and third were entirely FaceTime with our flight phones that we use for research. And yeah, so then you can just hold your phone up to the window and show your kids, like, take a look outside. It's like the ultimate way of bringing, you know, your friends and family along with you. So that was really special.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for Starlink here on Earth, and I'm thankful for Starlink in space as well, because we get those crazy like Starship re-entry views, and because communicating with a spacecraft shouldn't be something that's, you know, insanely hard. Obviously, it's an insanely hard technical challenge, but it's 2024. I mean, come on, we can solve these problems.
Yeah, I mean, there is like, SpaceX doesn't. I mean, it's a great example again of, you know, of a you know, it's an engineering problem that SpaceX wanted to solve for, you know, space-based communication. Eventually, you're going to have armadas of starships going to the moon and Mars. You can put a lot of Starlink laser link satellites out there and be entirely using laser-based communication, even as far out as Mars, if need be. I mean, it might just be like you know, a few constellations that are bouncing signals of sorts. But you know, so it has all these great, you know, utility in space, and then just what it can do back here on Earth, you know, is awesome. Like, it's anyway, just another good example. SpaceX able to kind of kill like 100 birds with one stone.
You were saying you had like a 20-minute window to send back the Violin Performance. The side note, the Harmony of Resilience video that you guys put out and the Violin Performance, just outstanding. Out frickin' standing. I mean, there's like on the one hand, you guys prioritized science. On the other hand, you guys also prioritized building excitement and showing human moments like that. That was amazing. What was the 20-minute window? Like, how did that work out?
That's what I'm saying was what our initial expectations were, that we would have a brief period to do a connectivity test and then like 20 minutes to send it down. And we had plan Bs of using like the floater cam, through, bouncing off of ground stations if needed. Like again, expectations were set very low for what the performance was going to be, and it wound up being way better. I mean, we wound up having like multiple takes of the Violin Performance that we beamed down. So it was just what we thought initially versus what actuals turned out to be.
So exceptional. Sarah absolutely crushed it, and thank you for enabling her to do that. That like by commissioning this mission and just. Yeah, it's the kind of thing you love to see. I had a question that I did want to ask you, like if you had a favorite image or video or photo that a crew member took. For me, I think it's either you on Skywalker or it's specifically the Violin Performance. But do you have a sort of a favorite visual or auditory moment from the mission? Favorites are hard. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's really tough on this one because there were a lot of pretty cool moments. I mean, just tons of them. Like there was a period of time where I think I was the only one up on night one where just seeing Earth at peak apogee was just unbelievable. More so than actual Sarah playing the violin. It just caught me off guard when I literally floated around right as she was removing it from its packaging, and just seeing this wooden instrument come out in the spaceship was like, holy shit, that's cool. Anna reading her book, kind of kid leading us through the folds of honor call with the American flag behind him. There were just a lot. And look, during the EVA, I'd say there was a kind of a moment, after I had opened the hatch and I was literally just looking right outside, waiting for the go to egress the vehicle. And there was like this sensory overload, just a lot of things happening in that moment that was pretty awesome. And I'll kind of remember that in my head too. So I don't know. There are a lot of mental snapshots, if you will.
Random question. What does it take to qualify a violin to fly in space?
Everything on the spaceship, including the spaceship itself, was baked out in a vacuum chamber. So, I mean, lots of concerns about, Dragon was designed in an emergency to vent down. If there was a fire and you had to, clear a contaminated atmosphere, but you're coming home in your suit. It wasn't initially designed to vent down to vacuum, repress up again, and then live in it for 3 more days, where there could be off-gassing from materials that could be toxic. So basically, it was a debate for a while, but in the end, the conclusion was literally everything gets baked out, including the entire spaceship went in the vacuum chamber. And the first violin didn't make it.
What?
It was a thermovac test, and some of the temperature ranges thrown at it were more than the violin could stomach, and it was, the testing range was recalibrated and done again, and it worked. But I think at one point we were thinking I know Sarah was practicing at like our crew house with a carbon fiber violin. So we thought it might come down to that, but in the end, a wooden one did qualify.
I'm glad for that. Something about the juxtaposition of a wooden instrument and the futuristic spacecraft. There's not much like it.
So cool.
And so much went into so much of this mission, including just that performance. I mean, I think John Williams gave his blessing. It just absolutely outstanding stuff. I get hung up on that one, but it's just so cool to me. Sawyer, oh, go ahead.
I would say it is important. Like you probably see it in all my like posts out there, but I'm like really, it's very disappointing. Like we went to the moon and we haven't been back in a very long time. And there is always that more than rightful argument of our resources could be better spent on other things. And it's I think you just have to take every opportunity you can to try and bring everybody along with, with the ride, and show people that there's a lot that we can do, that has a positive impact here on Earth, a unifying message, and accomplish crazy things out there in space. So I think like those violin moments are important. The book reading, the St. Jude kids are important. Like this all stuff has to go hand in hand, because we're not going to get there with half the population being okay with it. Like literally, you need the world behind you if you really want to make something like a self-sustaining civilization on Mars possible. It's gonna take a lot of people.
Right. And truly, it's one of those things where we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I try and tell people this all the time, that, it doesn't have to be a zero-sum thing. It doesn't have to be black and white. We can go to space and improve life on Earth by doing so, and also keep working on problems terrestrially. Like it really bums me out when people sort of get into that black and white thinking where it's like, we shouldn't be doing this, it makes no sense. And it's like, hello, we're explorers by nature, and we're going to learn so much by doing stuff like this that, hey, maybe it'll help people on the ground too.
Totally.
Sawyer, do we have a viewer question, perhaps?
We sure do. Here's one from Wow, who is asking, how is the process of opening the hatch? I know we were just seeing video of that. And in addition to that, I was adding, it sounded like there was questions about the seal in terms of closing it. If you could kind of go into detail of the inspection of the hatch during opening and closing too.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot here to this. So, I mean, the hatch and repressurizing the vehicle is everything. Like that is the one thing that had to go right. We reserved for coming home unpressurized as a contingency, but that is not how you wanted the EVA to end. So a lot was learned. For example, we took an entire hatch with us into the vacuum chamber at JSC. And opened it and closed it and did two different types of bonding to the seals, the inner and outer, to see how it would react. And, we knew, well, for example, we know like a baseline Dragon without the adhesive on the seals, those seals would come out in a very big way. And that would be a problem. And I don't think anyone would want to bet on the dexterity in those gloves pressurized to be able to actually reinsert them. So the bonding worked out really well. We did know, based on how it's applied, it's not like consistent around the whole. It's the whole hatch seal. It's in kind of clumps in various locations that you could have some bulging in between it. I mean, ultimately, and that's what Sarah observed on her inspection. It was very minor in a couple areas, and that when you close the hatch, it would be able to reseat properly. So that was totally fine and expected that we would potentially see that. And look, this is where SpaceX testing like crazy is so important. Without that adhesive, you would certainly have run into an issue that would have made it more challenging. But other than that, I'd say NASA helped a lot with this whole EVA, and there's a lot of times you guys know better than anyone, like this kind of old space, new space thing. Like NASA's pumped about this. Like they work with SpaceX, they work with other vendors. Like they want everyone to be successful. It all benefits them and their purpose and their mission too. They came out to SpaceX probably 6 months after we announced the mission, 2 years before flying. Observed the EVA training, observed suit development, gave feedback, and a lot of feedback on the hatch. They actually called that it was almost assuredly going to be a manual hatch opening, like 2 years before it, that the just residual outflow from our suits would create enough, just the PSI, even low against that, the surface area of the hatch would probably be too much for the hatch motor, but more than manageable for a human. So they knew that. They actually showed us the video of kind of the first Chinese EVA, which was quite an event with two people tugging on it and a bunch of papers flying out. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that, but so we knew that we had to be better about FOD than that. But anyway, they kind of called a lot of things. They called the what would likely be the impact on the umbilical, applying a force on on the crew members. They went out. I had, until I saw the debrief footage, I was wondering what was pushing me forward into the vestibule the whole time. It was the umbilical. So just going, it's just really a long way of shouting out NASA's contributions between testing and just subject matter expertise. They helped a lot and had a bunch of good calls on what actually played out during the EVA.
Nice. All right, we are getting a little bit low on time here, and I want to respect your time, so we won't keep you over unless you want to hang out. But so we'll do some rapid fire questions here. I'm just gonna start running through them, and I know this one's annoying. I'm sorry, but I have to do it. When do you expect or hope the next Polaris mission to happen? I know you're still in the thick of wrapping up Polaris Dawn, but you're a hit band. You came out with a good album, and then everyone's asking you, when's the next album?
It's a great question. It's a development program, and I just think realistically, it's probably like in the same 2 years time frame, because whatever we're going to do, somebody's building and is not off the shelf right now. And it always has to kind of pass the test of, does this help us in turn get to Mars? And every day they learn something more in that direction. So it just takes some time, but I think like probably 2 years before the next one flies.
Good deal. Do you think you'll continue to fly as a mission commander, or do you see maybe a Polaris mission where you stay on the ground?
Well, I mean, I think it probably depends on how many more Polaris missions there are. Like, I don't know. It's I learn something new all the time, and like what I think is in the realm of possible kind of expands after every mission, after every visit really to SpaceX. So like what I thought Polaris would be 2 years ago is different than now, might be different in future. But if it like remains just 2 more missions, Polaris 2 and 3, I suspect I'll be on both.
Amazing. So Polaris 3, as we have heard in the past, assuming things stay the same, don't change, maybe more missions get added before it happens, because who knows how long it's going to take. But Starship, Polaris 3 is supposed to be a all-up flight, a crewed flight on Starship from launch to landing. How are you feeling about that after having seen SpaceX catch a booster with these 2 arms hanging off the tower? Like, are you feeling like we're another step closer towards that?
Yeah, and I think like my timeline has definitely been pulled in on when I thought it would be possible, and that's not like just a me timeline. Like that's HLS, that's Mars. I think everybody, like even people working on the program, went from like it's X number of years out to something sooner. I mean, that was such a critical milestone, right? So I think I'll leave it to like, Elon to put out all the predictions. He's a lot closer and smarter on this than I can ever be. But whatever that timeline was that I think was in a lot of people's heads, it's sooner now.
Are you guys already having any sort of development discussions regarding Starship based on your experience flying in Dragon and things such as life support or just anything? I mean, famously, there is a crewed Starship mock-up here in Starbase.
Yeah.
So have you been having any sort of those discussions with SpaceX, or is it sort of just so early still?
I think, like I said, like there's a lot of learning, and when you learn something new, then you're like, could we apply it to this mission or that mission, or does it make sense now that we should be trying to do this on that mission? So like that happens constantly. I mean, we're always looking for opportunities to get ahead in a test and development program. I think I mentioned it before, like we flew Starship ECLA sensors on our mission for, almost all the oxygen sensors, were from Starship that we tested kind of post EVA, because they're better than the ones that are in Dragon right now. And that brought data back to the Starship program. So I guess the answer is yes. Like there are things we are learning, and we ask, like, does this go in the second mission? Does this go in the third mission? Things like that.
Awesome. So coming back down to Earth for a little bit, you fly MiGs, you fly all kinds of aircraft. You're restoring a Tornado, which thank you for doing that. As someone who's a fan of variable geometry wings. When you posted that on X, I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, yes, thank you. Because I never got to see one fly, nor a Tomcat for that matter. So how in your mind do you balance risk, flying a fighter aircraft or doing something like this EVA with, hey, this is risky, but it's teaching me something meaningful, or it's moving the needle forward? How do you balance taking risks versus progress? Because, my friend, I feel like you've taken some risks with this mission, measured risks, but thank you for that, because I think it's paid dividends.
I think like first, it always has to be worth it, right? So, I mean, there is some sort of calculus that I'm, taking on this incremental risk in my life, maybe more so than just getting hit by a car walking across the street or something, which is risk we all take every day, or getting to a car accident. So I'm taking on incremental risk here, and what do we stand to gain from it? And is it worth it? Like that's this, like at its simplest form. It gets a little bit more complicated when you get into a development mission for a spaceship, or spacesuit for that matter. Like there is that is some areas where I don't know if we like there are probably areas we should have taken more risk, to be honest. Like I do, and I also do like often like relative risk kind of assessment of things like going to Mars. There are so many things that we have no idea about that will inevitably surface itself on a 9-month journey, to and from potentially to. So, if that is like the destination here, or the ultimate step in achieving a very important vision, how are we ever going to get comfortable in that environment if we're not able to get comfortable about something that's probably much lower risk in a low Earth orbit type of setting? Now, there's good arguments the other way too, which is like if anything goes wrong here, it's certainly going to derail that bigger or grander objective. So it's important that we actually take less risk in this environment so that we can get to that. But I think there's certain areas, where we might even be able to go faster, accepting some more risk, and then inevitably you wind up you will be on that track anyway, because you're going into the unknown. You're going into such a period of inexperience for human spaceflight that you will wind up learning some things along the way, and that will be, especially for the first X number, will have elevated risk levels associated with it. But I think like the simple answer to it all is it has to be worth it.
Makes sense. And to be clear, if offered a ticket to the moon or Mars, would you go to either?
I think it just kind of depends on the circumstances. Like I think I mean, look, I tell us that every one of the SpaceXers on all our visits and such, they are on the greatest adventure in the history of humankind. Like, so how can you not want to be part of that? And you guys are. I mean, like just the fact that you're covering and educating the public on it, like we're all drawn to this incredible, adventure right now. So I think if like all the circumstances were right, where I thought, be able to kind of contribute in a meaningful way, like that's a pretty important test for me. Like I wouldn't be interested in just going up and looking out the window. Like I like Inspiration4, I like Polaris, because there's a lot of ways to contribute, towards that grander objective. And if there was like ever a moon or Mars mission or something, you'd have to feel like there was a way you were contributing somehow to a bigger picture, and like, I don't know, some outsized way.
Fantastic. Sawyer, go for it.
Yeah, if I can follow up on something you were talking about. You were just saying in a tweet recently that, or an X post, that you want more people to know what goes on behind the scenes at SpaceX, and for all of the amazing things that we see with the Inspiration4 and the Polaris Dawn crews. What aspects of SpaceX operations would you like the public to most know about behind the scenes?
I think I imagine they know already that you're talking about some of the most intelligent and highly motivated people in the world, and they obviously have a playbook that works. They couldn't do the things they do so that's like a given. But the amount of like testing, care, the attention to detail behind the scenes to get things right, catching the boost, super heavy. When I was in quarantine, I was running around the pad with a bunch of SpaceXers, and I was asking for the odds Like, where did they think they were at? It was everyone gave a number above 90%. Right? Like nobody that, but yet a lot of people like they're winging it, like they're getting lucky. Look at the track record of blowing up rockets or something, not appreciating the approach that goes into it. We were shown a high-speed video of a subscale super heavy that they intentionally crashed into a subscale launch tower to see exactly what would happen. And then they give the data to everybody. SpaceX learned so much in our mission about ESD and flammability risks and decompression sickness, things that nobody knew about because no one really attempted to do these kind of things on a new spacesuit in 40 or 50 years. They gave the data to everyone that wanted it. I mean, it's they really test like hell, the attention of detail to get things right, and then the desire to elevate everybody else around them is like, I think, an underappreciated portion of the SpaceX story.
Absolutely. There's so many behind the scenes things, or I wish I could be a fly on the wall in this meeting sort of situations, but we've hit an hour. I think that's the fastest hour I've ever experienced in my life. Jared, thank you so much for being on. One final question for you. When you stepped out onto the Skywalker platform, you said, and I hope I'm getting this right, back at home we have a lot of work to do, but from here it sure looks like a perfect world. Oh my God, man. Amazing. How much thought and consideration, how long did it take you to come up with those words? Because I think they really embody so much of what you're doing with the Polaris program.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was maybe a few days before going into quarantine. I was just out on a jog next to our crew house thinking about it all. And, I didn't know that was what I was going to say for sure. I think you're always just trying to search for that balance of like the realities of the world that we live in it. And every day it's not pretty, there are people dying in multiple conflict zones. There's hardships, people starve to death. I mean, it's not a pretty world when you see it up close at times. And that's something we have to do something about. It's like, it's a lot of work that we all have to do. But, if you can zoom out, like what we have is very special. There is nothing in the neighborhood like it. I can guarantee you that up there. Like we have something very unique, and when we can pull ourselves out of some of that, the harsh realities of some of day-to-day life, we can achieve some pretty incredible things. And we just have to remind ourselves of that from time to time.
Absolutely. It's so important. So thank you. Sawyer, thank you for being on. I couldn't have done this without you, buddy.
My pleasure. Thanks for all the great questions. Jared, thank you so much for the phenomenal answers. One of the best astronaut interviews I've done, hands down.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for doing what you do. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, members. Thank you, KMR, for operating the stream. And thank you to Jared for being on with us. Jared, man, just the classiest person I could possibly think of. You're doing this to further human knowledge. And obviously you get a hell of a ride out of it. But like, I wish there was more Jared Isaacmans. I think the world would be a much better place if there was more Jared Isaacman. So hopefully more people start to get a clue here with the amazing stuff you guys are doing.
Okay, I'm lucky as hell to be here, so I appreciate that. But always a big team effort. Thanks, guys.
Hey, luck is one thing, hard work is another. So thanks. All right. I think with that, we will see you nerds next time. Jared, you are welcome back anytime, my friend. We have so many more questions that we could have asked you, but you know what? That's an hour. And yeah. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Echo down to nominal.
Finding downside FD off.
Bring in FD off.
It's orange!
125! Oh my God! Oh my God!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed. We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You read? Sure. We don't need any more of these.